Attention, chiropractors, slayers of subluxation, unleashers of the imprisoned impulse. Welcome to another episode of the Chiropractic Research Breakdown, where each week we break down the most relevant chiropractic science and philosophy necessary to empower you to change the health of your community from the inside out. I hope by this point you know that I'm your host, Dr. Anthony Pellegrino from ChiroEdge. I hope you also know that I love education and I love helping you change your community. So anything we talk about here, we'll probably make into like a patient newsletter. And if you want that, jump on chiroedgemedia.com. I'm here with my host, or my guest, not host, who I'm very excited to have her here. Her name is Amy, or Dr. Amy Haas. She's done some pretty cool things, and she's humble about it. So if you want to check it out, just go Google Amy Haas with 2 A's. And you'll see that she has like 17 PhDs from Yale. I'm just kidding. She only has 14. Again. But yeah, she is smarter than me and has more degrees than probably you and me combined. And that's going to make her really uncomfortable. So I'm going to go with it. And we're going to be talking about, so if you guys are listening right now, get ready because you're going to want to stay on now. Oh, you didn't see. So she hasn't seen the copy that I have. If you guys are watching live, it's so funny. You told me not to go and keep you humble because I termed you in the actual post. I believe it was the Queen of HRV and the Duchess of Adaptability are the literal words which you can use on stage now.
Duchess of Adaptability.
The Duchess of Adaptability, I think you should use from now on. So we're going to be diving deep into those topics, specifically integrating adaptability into a clinical practice and explaining and communicating that and shifting, as we said, from, hey, how are you feeling today to how are you adapting to physical, chemical, and emotional stress today? And I'm super excited to dive into this. Did I cover everything you wanted to cover there, Dr. Amy?
Perfect. Let's get into the meat.
Let's get right into the meat. So I was super excited that when you wanted to discuss about integrating adaptability into a clinical practice. What ways do you do that, or do you think we should know about?
The first thing that I do in my new patient exam is I use a multimodal exam, which shows what is normal versus abnormal about both the structure and the function of the body. And then you frame it and you say, okay, if this is not working well in your body, is your body able to adapt to a stressor at its best? And the common sense answer to that is, of course not. And then you can give people some really concrete examples of how subluxation can interfere with adaptation in the body. You can use, stories and allegories and stuff like that. One of my favorite things to share with patients is the distinction between a cement span bridge, which is solid and not moving, versus a regular suspension bridge, like the Brooklyn Bridge, the Golden Gate Bridge. Because those can move, because it's a tensegrity structure, which is a balance of compression elements and tension elements that can move and dissipate forces. The resilience of that structure is much higher than something that can't move. So if those two structures, a suspension bridge versus a cement span bridge, encounter the exact same force, one is more resilient than the other. And that usually, that rings true for a lot of my patients. They're like, that makes a lot of sense. And then a lot of patients who, like me, were around for the 1989 World Series earthquake, which you probably weren't even born at the time. But
that was my birth year, so it depends on when in the year.
Oh my God. Out in San Francisco, one of my formative memories, I was an early teenager, and all of a sudden I was watching the World Series on TV, and everything started to shake. And I'm like, is the TV shaking? No. Their world is shaking. Wow. And they had a huge earthquake out in San Francisco. There was a lot of destruction. And there was a very famous freeway called the Nimitz Freeway. It was a double-decker freeway. And there was significant damage. One layer, in many cases, fell onto the one below it because that bridge was not able to move and dissipate with the forces of the earthquake. And at the exact same time, the San Francisco Golden Gate Bridge did just fine. Actually, there, by some reports, it started to vibrate and resonate, which unto itself is interesting. But that drives home the point, because many of us remember that. That drives home the point that freedom to adapt to forces is essential for resilience to stressors. Make sense?
Makes perfect sense. One thing I think is really important is I mean, we can like talk about adaptability, and it's something that you and I talk about all day. But if for those individuals, I don't know if you still have this, I don't know how you framed things in your community. There's still people who come to us because when they walk through the door, they're expecting like, I have back pain. It just wants to, I don't care. I just want that to feel better.
Mm-hmm.
And it's this constant like shifting of conversation.
Mm-hmm.
How do you take that person for, I just want to have my back feel better, to, I want to better adapt to physical, chemical, emotional stress, not just for the short term, for the long term?
Mm-hmm. First and foremost, don't make them wrong. They're not wrong for coming to you for back pain. That's a very common conception about chiropractic. But you can say there's more to it. Can I share that with you? And then you could go into the tensegrity structure and say, hey, the human body is a biotensegrity structure. It's like the Golden Gate Bridge, except that adaptability is regulated by this thing up in your cranium called your brain. So if you have anything that's not moving in the structure that you're experiencing as pain or symptoms or tightness, that means that your structure is probably compromised. And where's that going to go for you in 5, 10, 15 years? And then you can start talking with people about what's really important to them. Because typically if someone has a symptom like pain, back pain, I'm going to be whatever, some crap like that. I had it too, so I get it. But, if someone comes in with a symptom like that, one of the things that we can do to expand their world is say, okay, and what's that stopping you from enjoying in your life? What have you curtailed? What have you pulled back from that you can't do anymore because you're inhibited from enjoying your life because you can't move? And what would happen to you if we restored your structure back to normal so you didn't have to worry about that? Yeah. So open up the bigger picture for them.
Yeah, I think that's huge. And in establishing goals as well, right? It's like you can ask them that question, what would be the one thing that if you saw change in your life? And oftentimes what the initial answer is going to be like, oh, well, I want my back pain to get better. Mm-hmm. And you can write that down and you can stop there. Or you can ask the question of, well, why?
Why?
Like, what does that let you do? Oh,
play with your grandkids.
Yeah.
Go out and hike mountains. Do you want to be on a boat and not be worried that your structure is going to fail?
Absolutely. I love
function.
Yeah. I love that. And it's I mean, that's just something that we work on in practice. And it's like the better we get at that, I'm sure you've experienced it, the better we get at making that bigger picture. It's like, oh, the more people are here, the more people are here to get adjusted, and the longer they stay.
Because they want something bigger.
Yeah.
And we can share the bigger picture of chiropractic with them. And when they invest in that, when they emotionally say, hey, yeah, that's something I want, then you can have this value for value exchange with people saying, there's something you want, I can provide that to you.
Right. And you're not, and even with the conversation of you're not making them wrong, it's like, well, for them, it might be, well, now I want my back to feel better because I'm going to be able to dance at my kid's wedding, And so you're both right, which is awesome. This tensegral structure, adaptability, they're great words. Mm-hmm. Clinically, what are you doing to actually measure that and be objective?
You can measure biotensegrity in the biomechanical sense, and you can measure adaptability. So it's a combination of more of a biomechanical approach coupled with a neurological adaptation approach. So let's separate that into two. The biomechanical approach is symmetry in the body. Do both when someone is walking, is their gait pattern normal? Do they kink to one side with every single step? Can you record that on video and reflect that back at them? When someone is standing in a gravitational field, are they lined up? You and I went to, like you, we went to classes where we were taught ears, shoulders, hips, knees, and lateral malleolus, right? So if a person isn't that, then that's abnormal, and you can take a picture and reflect that back to them. So asymmetry of structure, asymmetry of motion. Some of the tests that I do are the Derifield, the leg flexion test, but I take that a few steps further, and I will use first, if you get an asymmetry on that leg flexion, you make the patient feel it, and you say, okay, do you understand? These are not the same. That's like having your suspension bridge with one cable tighter than the other. Do you think that's going to interfere with your suspension bridge? Because you're walking on that all day. If you have a wobbly tire for 50,000 miles, what are you going to do? Bad things. So that is just the Derifield test. And then you can extrapolate that with a Jonda leg extension test. You can do a functional motion screen, which we can borrow from other professions. It's basically, how is the body moving? Are there asymmetries that we can objectively record and show a person? So it's not subjective. It's like, hey, this is abnormal. X-rays fall into that category. Is this normal or abnormal? Then let's jump to the neurological adaptability. So the logical jump between the biomechanical and the neurological is, okay, what is adaptability in the body? The main function of the body is to perceive the environment, both internal and external, integrate that information, and execute an appropriate and timely adaptive response. That's the basic function of the body. So if there's anything that interferes with that safety pin cycle, if there's any disorientation in that safety pin cycle, by definition, your body will not be as able to adapt. It's as simple as that. And I find that most of my patients really do get that. So some reflections that the body is not adapting appropriately, we can use physiological, such as heart rate variability is a well accepted in many fields reflection of adaptability within the body. You can use more straight up neurotests, such as you and I were talking about the Fukada step test or Romberg's test. Because Fukada step test and Romberg's test are tests to assess how well the body is adapting to gravity. Incoming information, integrated, executed command. Good stuff in, integrated, good stuff out. Anything with interference going into the brain can't generate the right response. Disorientation. And for anybody who's listening to this, Christopher Kent has written a fantastic article on disorientation. I'm going to refer you to that for further, deeper reading, because that will, if you haven't heard of that, you need to read that. It's beautiful.
Are you referencing the 4D or one of his more recent stuff?
Any of it.
Any of it? Yeah, that gets referenced on pretty much every episode of this show. Is all those. I'm a big Christopher Kent fan. Actually, the reason this even exists is because of On Purpose, because I'm in love. So thank you.
Really rock solid work. I mean, they've changed the face of the profession by bringing what they have, and it sounds like that's what you're into doing. Totally.
Yeah. I love it. One of our conversations, and I think I really wanted to do this and go into it, because before we started, I was like, I had to grab a piece of paper before we started, because I was already taking notes on it. And we looked at, and you had mentioned that in our profession, we've had this obsession with the brain. The brain, which is amazing. It's so much cooler than the sciatica, right? Like, it's so much better. I think it is. But
what's the next logical step?
But why? It's like the brain, and we want to influence the brain, but why? So let's Duchess of Adaptability. let's
That's awesome.
Dive. And by the way, I don't know if you can see it, but we have a comment on here. Dr. Ian Stuhlman from Florida says, definitely the Duchess of Adaptability. So it's your new stage name, and you're welcome. So you're welcome for that.
Hilarious. Ian, I'm so sorry I missed you this past weekend. Apparently we did this.
Oh, man. So, Duchess, let's go into why you think we need to go further. Mm-hmm. Did I break up? I'm sorry. I was saying, you were saying that with the brain, that we need to take it a step further. Why? How and why do we do that? Do we need to?
So recent research has been elucidating the pathways by which the chiropractic adjustment and correction of vertebral subluxation can impact areas of the brain, such as the prefrontal cortex or the H reflex, those are beautiful unto themselves. And oh my God, doing those studies is no small thing. I have the utmost respect for the background work, the vision, the clarity that goes into creating those studies that give us those foundational pieces. So please understand that what I'm about to say says those foundational pieces, that's not work that I'm not even sure I could do that.
I had to look up what an H reflex was before I read Heidi Havoc's research. I was like, what the heck is an H reflex? And I still don't understand it, but I think I got what it kind of means, but I don't know what it is.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's just focus on the word reflex.
Yeah.
That says it all.
In the shape of an H.
Well, yes, too. But if we were to simply think of that rather than go deeply into the neurophysiology as a reflex, what is a reflex? Information, inbound, integrated, executed response. That's a reflex. If we are changing a reflex, we are changing adaptation.
Perfect.
Kind of as simple as that. When we're talking about changes in EEG, when we're talking about changes in the prefrontal cortex, then we are talking about how the body integrates information and executes its response. So where I would love for us to shift as a profession is taking all of this great information that we're starting to accrue about how chiropractic affects the brain and taking that next logical step and say, what's the outcome? Because what I think will get us further as a profession is showing outcomes, neurologically based outcome, adaptive outcomes that are measurable and accepted by multiple fields. And this is the way that I think we're going to get our foot a little bit more in the door, but we have to maintain our unique philosophy with respect to adaptability, and we are empowering the body to adapt better. We're not correcting adaptation. We are eliminating anything that is obstructing adaptation. Very different perspective, and we can still maintain that while simply stating our patients are adapting better as measured by heart rate variability, Romberg's test, Bucata step test, as measured by heart rate recovery is one of them after exercise.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you and I can probably go back and forth until the cows come home about different ways we can take tests and interpret them as adaptability.
Yeah.
Fair?
Yeah, I love it. And I think that that's a huge thing is that when we look at this brain function, the same thing with HRV, which we're kind of talking about. It's like seeing you have an awesome retrospective analysis that showed case series of changes with HRV, which is great from last year in the Chiropractic Journal of Australia. But one of the things is like with HRV, I mean, outside of saying, you know, we have these 3,000 people and the only thing they did was did chiropractic and this is a double-blind randomized controlled trial, how HRV changed. It's kind of hard to see like, you know, that this is the one thing that changed it. And even with that, it's like this concept of garbage in, garbage out, essentially, and not just garbage, but like how much quantity and quality, and both of those things, and being able to measure with these other things and take the whole pie together, which is why I love that Christopher Kent article on 4-dimensional model of subluxation.
Yes.
Because he's like, how do we measure it? Dysautonomia. Well, we can do thermal. We can do HRV. Adaptability. How do we measure the quantity and quality? Dyskinesis. Well, we can do SEMG, and we can take all of these things together and create this full picture of adaptability.
Right. That's the multimodal assessment that I was talking about that I do with my patients so that we can create that bigger picture for them and get a general sense. How well is the body adapting? Where are the areas where we can eliminate or remove any obstructions and just allow the body to adapt better?
Yes. And I love watching people and being on it and talking about better adaptability. Can we, and I don't know if there's anything here or not. But we're going to find out. Differentiating between the quantity and the quality. In terms of like input, okay, and aberrancies, and when subluxation is present, is there not enough movement, which is causing bad information going up? Is there improper movement, which is causing the wrong information going up? Is there too much movement? And now there's a bombardment of proprioceptive information. The brain's like, what the heck's going on? I can't handle this. Are we getting too hung up on any one of those things? Do we need to explore all of them? Is one of them does need to get thrown out? You know this better than me. What topic do you like? Where should we be going with that?
I'm going to take this in a direction you're not going to expect.
I love that.
So, which of all that information does the brain need to make the best decision possible for adaptation, for survival?
Tell me. All of it? Yeah.
Yeah. There's kind of no question about that. If there's any deficit of information, whether that's quality or quantity, that results in a decision that may not be appropriate. Right?
Yeah.
So I'm a pretty big hiker, and several years back, there was a young lady hiking in the northern presidentials of the White Mountains in New Hampshire. Her name was Kate Montrasova. She was actually an accomplished mountaineer. She knew what she was doing, and she was going to do a very difficult hike called a Presidential Traverse, which is over 22 miles over the highest peaks in New Hampshire in the dead of winter. So, not much of a margin for error there. You have to have very good preparation and very good decision making. She had actually climbed, honestly I've forgotten. I think she had already climbed Kilimanjaro, Rainier, she may have been a couple other ones, but she was an accomplished mountaineer. And she decided she was going to set out and do this hike solo. Well, she didn't have all of the information. She did not successfully check the changes in the weather forecast for that day, but there was that she could have perceived the changes in the weather as the front was altering its course, had she not had her headphones in. That simple deficit created she had a lack of what they refer to as situational awareness. Any deficit in situational awareness created an inability to make the right decision. And that is why she made the wrong decision and she died. So what's the moral of the story? The least little tiny thing, headphones in your ears where you can't hear the increasing pace of the wind howling at your back. You don't have that information, you're not going to make the right decision. So I'll go back to the question, which information is necessary for the brain to make the best adaptive decisions? All of it.
And I think that kind of throws almost like a wrench into the research aspect of it, because it's like we can look at this and it's like, if it were if every 100% of the time somebody's information was off. An analogy that I like to do with all of our financial guys is like, listen, like if you had Warren Buffett's brain and you just made all the right calls, and yesterday you read a book that was just the history of the last 100 years of what the market did, right? And you had Warren Buffett's brain and you made decisions based off the information that came from that book. But that book was not the correct information. The history was wrong. You're not going to pick winners. You're not. Right. Even if you're making all the right decisions based off the information that you have, you can't pick a winner. And if it were like that, if that were the case 100% of the time, right, then, well, that would be really easy to study because you would just measure the quality of afferent signals. Okay. Kind of like if, I believe that sometimes there's nerve compression, right? And that model of subluxation in some people is apparent and present, but it's not there 100% of the time. So it makes it more difficult to study subluxation. On the other end, I don't know. I know you are nerdy, I'm assuming, because you had the 23 PhDs from Columbia. 27, sorry. Yeah, 3 cubed. But are you into like comic books or those movies or Avengers or anything like that?
Marvel Comics, Avengers.
Marvel, okay. So we're going to go Justice League, Man of Steel. Did you see the new Superman movie? Not the Batman versus Superman. All right, you got to go back and watch the new Origins Superman movie.
Yeah, we'll do.
There is a scene, and it's my favorite chiropractic scene that's ever been in any superhero movie. I think you're going to like where I'm going with this, where General Zod, I think, is who it is. is the bad guy, and he's on the planet Earth and he's fighting Superman, and he takes like his helmet gets destroyed in the fight, and he takes the helmet off. And all of a sudden, what that helmet had been doing for him this entire time was filtering out all of the stimuli on Earth. So he's there and he takes it off. And this movie has, you can hear the buzzing of the lights. You can hear the horn from a mile away. You can hear people walking. You can hear the chatter. You can all these different things. And he can't figure his crap out because there's all of these stimuli going out, and he freaks out and he loses the fight. And Superman is like, I've been training the last 23 years to be able to handle all of these stimuli and blah, 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 blah. And I'm used to this. And he wins the fight. And that was like, I was like, did they just explain the safety pin cycle in Superman? Is that what just happened? And I use this analogy all the time. And really not that many people have seen this scene. So I want, like, sometimes I'll have a kid who's a big Superman fan. And he's like, oh, that makes sense. And he'll be like, is that why I can't focus in school that well? Is that why I can now focus better? Is that why I'm sleeping better? Is that why this or that? I'm like, maybe. I mean, you're just adapting better. So I think that this whole conversation surrounding all of this is crucially important.
Anything that distracts your brain from paying attention to the good incoming information, your brain won't make the best decision. I totally agree.
I love that. And I think it's so important. It's so cool to be having this conversation, to watch how this conversation, I haven't been in chiropractic for as long as you, who's celebrating, we won't go into what anniversary it is from chiropractic.
Oh, but honestly though, both of us are youngins compared to the people that have led the charge in this for so many years.
Right.
We look up to and we learn from. So we're still newbies here.
Yeah, and it's pretty fascinating to see, like, years ago, how the conversation, when you read things, it was all about this brain out communication. Yeah. And I love just having this conversation where it's like, well, the brain out miscommunication is probably caused by the brain's making all of the right calls and the right decisions. Maybe it's just doing it based off of bad information.
I would agree that is a distinct possibility. Absolutely.
It's pretty cool. So taking that clinically, explanation-wise, I know we've been kind of going, and we have a couple of really good analogies. I really like your hiking analogy. I'm probably gonna have to throw away the Superman analogy because no one really gets it.
Love it.
Okay, but
don't throw it away. I love that.
Okay, cool. I have a blog post where I actually clipped the YouTube video. That was on my website. I think like 6 people have seen it. But it was fun. What else do we need to do? Is there anything else we need to do? Do we just need to keep riding this? Is, like, as a profession, what else can we incorporate? What do we need to? What do you want me to do tomorrow? What do you want me to do tomorrow?
I think we as a profession need to absolutely own adaptability, because that is our birthright. That is ours. That is our philosophy. That is the really bigger picture execution of what it is that we do. And that is where we can spin research to our favor. HRV is a great example of that.
I love it. Well, thanks. I had fun. This has been awesome.
I've enjoyed talking with you. Thank you very much for this conversation. Thanks for the honor of having me on your show. Oh,
the honor is all mine. Just real quick, parting words of wisdom. And if anybody wants to contact you, your Harvard at harvard.edu email address would be perfect.
Yeah, my Harvard at mit.yale.edu subscript Stanford, please. Thank you.
That's your email address. I'm writing that down. That's going to be posted on the page. Yeah. How anybody can contact you, and any parting words of wisdom?
Parting words of wisdom. When someone comes in with a symptom, listen to them, hear them, and create a space in your mind that they can go, that they can't even see yet. And then take the patient's hand and guide them towards that possibility, that space, that room. Tell them it's there and give them little bits and pieces of what is possible. For example, I had a woman come in with fibro, and she basically could barely walk. And I said, can I take the person that I'm going to know a year from now and hand her back to you? What's possible? And I didn't tell her what was possible because she wasn't ready to hear that. She, a year and a half later, is fully functional and doing yoga. So create that space, create that possibility, and then guide people towards it. Much bigger possibility than just pain relief. The possibility of playing with the grandkids, the possibility of going hiking, going biking, having a second honeymoon with the spouse where you can go romp around Europe and go up all the stairs in Croatia because your body is resilient and can adapt and can do it. Those are the possibilities that we all know is possible with chiropractic, but your patients may not know that coming in. Draw that for them. So agree with them and then expand and make good on it.
Make good on it.
Yeah, that's that integrity thing.
Yeah.
Don't ever, like, I'm not a big fan of blowing smoke because that is just not a good idea. So just make sure whatever you tell them is eminently achievable. And then there are action steps towards getting to that goal. Measurable.
Measurable action steps. I
Mhm.
love it. And if you've listened at all, you have numerous ways to measure.
Mhm.
Awesome. Well, Dr. Amy, thank you so much. To those of you guys who listened, thanks for being on here. This was a lot of fun. Go out there, slay some subluxations, and you know I love you all. Have a great night.